Friends, this probably goes without saying, but I love music. I know, that's a huge shocker, but sometimes there is just no better feeling than curling up in a nice warm blanket, get a nice, delicious carbonated diet beverage by my side, and just listening to music, just listening to a beautifully engineered analog recording and listening to it on LP. Just nothing better than that. So here's a great one. This is the 1978 debut album from Flim and the BBs. Just listen to this. Listen to that deep but not overly hyped bass. You get this beautiful, woody, crisp sound, very dry sound of this very well-recorded drum kit. You get this beautifully clear sax, just a lovely piano. It has all this warmth and depth that you could just never really get out of a digital recording. Oh, and those dynamics, again, just couldn't possibly happen in the digital realm. So, while we're here, why don't we do a little bit of research and see if we can learn about the making of this album. Well, let's learn together, shall we? Let's see, Flim and the BBs, Flim and the BBs, here we go. All right, the group's self-titled debut album was recorded in 1978 at Sound 80 and was ostensibly going to be a direct-to-disc recording. Nevertheless, 3M placed an experimental prototype 50.4 kHz digital recorder in the control room as a backup to the direct-to-disc lathe. Weird. Because of the direct-to-disc setup, recording directly onto a lacquer platter, the band was required to play the entire LP side without stopping and without being able to do any editing afterward. That's impressive. When the resulting acetate disc was deemed inferior in sound quality to the digital master tape, the LP record was pressed from that digital backup tape. Holy crap, it's digital, what the flim? So, how does the first non-classical digital recording from all the way back in 1978, when the technology was in its infancy and therefore should theoretically sound its worst, sound so warm, so dynamic? What other things that I've considered to be indisputable truths for all my life just simply aren't true? I feel like everything I know is wrong. Well, I'll assume for now that my name is still Jeff.
Hi, Bob.
And that I'm probably still a music addict, but enough about me, I guess. Let's try to figure out why people hate digital recordings and if they're really as bad as we think they are. Well, while I hold one of my mini Moog pillows for comfort, let's put ourselves back into the minds of recording engineers from the 1970s. What was the bane of their existence? Well, I can think of two things, actually. Noise and equipment reliability, or lack thereof. Tape had an inherent noise floor and needed precise alignment prior to each recording session. Tubes generated hiss and could turn microphonic or completely give out at a moment's notice. Audio transformers, even the best ones, could buzz or hum. It was an ongoing struggle to get clean recordings as efficiently as possible. Companies like Dolby and DBX invented noise reduction systems, but even those were fraught with peril. Like the time when Steely Dan's DBX machine simply stopped being able to decode the mixes of their Katy Lied album properly, rendering the mixes dull and lifeless, according to their guitarist Denny Dias. So while the move to digital recording media was certainly one of the things that these engineers gravitated towards as a fix, it was only one piece of the puzzle. Engineers started gravitating towards tubeless and/or transformerless equipment, including tubeless and transformerless mics and mic preamps. Guitarists moved away from tube amplifiers to solid-state amps, or perhaps even went direct into the mixing board with a device like the Rockman. And let me tell you, the Rockman, as someone who was a kid in the 1980s, I desperately wanted one of these things. They had a sound that people loved at the time, and they were easier and less expensive to produce than their valve-based counterparts, which made them accessible to more people. And speaking of sounds that people liked at the time, you started getting clean, metallic, even some would say sterile sounds from the hugely popular DX7 synthesizer. The sound of the Rhodes was passé. The DX7 electric piano sound was where it's at. You also had drum machines like the Lindrum becoming available to the masses, producing clean, pseudo-realistic, and yet still extremely mechanical drum beats on numerous popular recordings. I'd play some of them for you here, but then this video would get taken down in a heartbeat, so yeah, sorry, can't do it. At the end of the day, all of the warmth that we got from the 70s, from overdriven tube amplifiers, analog synth oscillators, tube/transformer-based condenser mics and preamps, that was all replaced by a clean, sometimes harsh, and again very sterile sound palette. How much of this was due to the use of digital recording and the loss of tape saturation? In the grand scheme of things, just not all that much. But you know, since this all happened roughly at the start of the CD era in the early 1980s, audiophiles tended to blame the CD and by extension digital recording in general. There was one other phenomenon happening in the early compact disc era as well: compact disc re-releases of older albums. Record companies were in a rush to get these CDs to market, but the tools simply hadn't been created yet to make an optimal transfer of tape to digital, and engineers had yet to perfect the art of remastering analog recordings on digital media. Some might say that it's still a work in progress. The tapes themselves were also starting to age, as they were anywhere from, say 5 to 25 years old at that point, for most of the material experiencing a re-release on CD. Early CD re-releases were therefore often muddy and lifeless. I like to describe it as having a few blankets or maybe one big comforter like this thrown over them. Although at least those first re-releases tended to still maintain the dynamics of the original recordings. This, of course, would change during the second generation of CD re-releases in the late 90s and early 2000s, where the music would get compressed to a sliver of its original dynamic range, all for the sake of loudness. As a result of all this, audiophiles directed their hate towards CDs and digital recording back in the 80s. Their old LPs sounded objectively better than the CD re-releases, and the new CDs being released in the 1980s of new material generally sounded cold and sterile. Now, never mind that those same albums sounded just as bad on LP. See, that's right, there's nothing inherently warmer sounding about LPs. Getting a vinyl version of a typical 80s digital recording won't inherently sound better than the CD version. They may sound different from one another, mind you, since each would go through a different mastering process, and every person's going to have their own specific stylus and cartridge and phono preamp. But anyway, very rarely was the end result on LP something that was objectively better than the CD. If you can think of an example of an 80s album that sounded objectively better on LP than on CD, please let me know in the comments. The moral of the story is this: don't just turn up your nose on a recording because it's all digital. It is entirely possible to get warm, lovely sounding recordings in the digital realm. Conversely, don't assume that a recording is better because it's all analog or because it's on vinyl. There is nothing inherently better about vinyl as music playback media as compared to CDs or uncompressed digital audio. In fact, one could make a compelling argument that the CD is objectively better, but I won't do that. Just remember, this is all coming from somebody who owns thousands of vinyl LPs. But I've also got over 5,000 CDs. Just the moral of the story is don't discriminate. If it sounds good, it is good. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click that little bell icon to get notified when my videos come out. Please also join my Discord, link in the description, and follow me on Twitch, link also in the description. Until next time, thank you ever so much, and I'm going to go back to doing some music listening now.